Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. I'm joined this week by the innocuous, behind the scenes, almost always on the show, Charles Love of ShowTech Solutions. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Hey, Chris, thanks. I'm glad I'm here.
Hey, so we go all over the place with episodes as of late with the show. I mean, I've had someone even like from the counterintelligence space. Like, come on, we've gone everywhere you can possibly go in cyber, and this week is a little bit different because it's not necessarily about what happens in the ether or the digital world. This is that pen and paper space of documents where policies, procedures, process and procedures come into play. And we recently, Charles, you and I were part of a town hall for Secure Outcomes as a part of MSP Ignite. And we were talking about who should or shouldn't sign off on the policies. And I think for the first time, maybe in several years of my involvement with the CIS strategy with Secure Outcomes, you kind of gave us a show stumper, like almost to the point of like crickets would have been nice because crickets make noise. And there was no sound when you said, what do you mean you don't have all your employees sign off on your policies? And so for those of you listening, this show is about policies that you have or don't have your employees sign off on. And I think the compelling argument today, if you listen to the whole episode, is going to maybe change your perspective on the approach you have with policies, process, and procedures, and the way in which you go about ensuring that the culture and strategy within your organization is meeting those expectations, not just for your leadership team, but for everybody in your organization. So, Charles, can you kind of give me, I'll just lead with what you said to me so that you can really fill in the blanks. If I ask you to bake a cake and I ask you to include sprinkles on the cake, then you had better show me a cake with sprinkles. So for the audience, give me some backstory on this, because I think it really sets the stage for what I think most of the audience who's listening, who's trying to achieve some level of compliance, whether it's for CIS, they want to align with those safeguards, or it's another framework, or even they just think about like an employee handbook. There's merit to this across the board. So give us a little backstory and then let's dive a little bit deeper.
For sure. So let me kind of take you back a year or so ago. Yeah. So my peer group, people in my peer group keep going on and on about this thing called Secure Outcomes, right? And they have this meeting and they talk about CIS. I don't know what CIS is. I'm like, I got a business to run. I don't got time for this. And nobody's really making me do this, so I'm not going to do it, right? So, as we go through this last year has been kind of transformative for the business, and I'm really trying to make us a well-oiled machine. Right. And as we see everything changing in the, ecosystem that is an MSP, it's becoming very apparent that it is the damn Wild West. Right. And we're going into customers and we're like, what do you mean? Like prospects, what do you mean the MSP needs to know your password? Right. Like all these crazy things that we're hearing. I'm like, man, every MSP is just doing their own thing.
Are you saying you don't keep your client passwords in a spreadsheet?
No, I do not. Which is
it's
good.
In numbers, okay.
Yeah, it's Notepad. What are you kidding? So going back to peer group. Yeah. Going back, it's on an Amazon public facing thing, right? That's normally what happens. No offense to Amazon. It's just a joke. So hearing about all these peer group meetings and their Secure Outcomes, I'm starting to hear things from friends of mine And they're like, oh yeah, we're done with control, whatever. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? And they're like, well, the whole company kind of knows that this is how we do something. And at some point, I think I was with you and maybe Matt Lee, and then I'm sitting there listening to you two, and then the light bulb went off. Like, oh, this is what CIS is, right?
I mean, if you had two of us in the same room and a light bulb went off, that's flattering, because we can't even get a light bulb installed when we're
Yeah.
both in the same room.
Well, it's more of like it finally hit me. I don't remember what event it was. It may have been AMM or the not AMM, the I can't think of the CompT event. And you guys are sitting at a table. CCF, thank you. And we're sitting there, and I'm hearing these guys talk about, well, how do I handle this? And how do I handle this? I'm like, but I have that question too. I have the, and all the things, like, it was funny.
It just floods all at once, right?
It was like a light hit the two of you. Oh, right. Like this is,
and we're like,
what
oh crap, we're being called home.
So no joke. After the meeting, I walk out, grab my phone. I'm texting Steve Alexander from MSB Ignite. How fast can you get me into this CIS thing? And then lo and behold, I was in it the next day. So to kind of fast forward a bit, what I will tell you, and anybody listening who was in my shoes, where this is, I don't want to say nonsense, but this isn't for me, right? It sounds silly now when I say it out loud. It's kind of like a customer saying, nobody wants to hack me, right? So it's the same thing.
Right.
So going back to the cake analogy, I started talking to all the employees. I said, hey, how many USB drives you got in your backpack? I kid you not. I made everybody take out all the USB drives. There was 30 of them on the table. How many of these are encrypted? And then, after a lot of debate, we determined absolutely none of them were encrypted.
But what was the debate? Like, I mean, because the reality is, if I gave you a flash drive, I would be dumb to give you an encrypted flash drive if I wanted you to use it.
Fair enough, but like these are things that the guys have in their bag with who knows what on it, like installers, let's, potentially not bad stuff, right? Let's just put it that way. A bad stuff meaning like password sheets or something like that.
Sure, like a CSV really file that just has like, client X is on this flash drive.
You never know, right? Like it could have whatever.
We're not judging.
No, we don't know.
Right.
So I opened my bag and I have a total of 3, okay? And all 3 of mine are BitLocker. Idiot Charles just assumed that they all were BitLockering their USB drive.
But
right?
Why? Okay, I'm just gonna be fair. Like, to be fair and devil's advocate here. Why does it need to be encrypted, Charles?
Because if somebody gets a hold of my drive, they could just read the damn thing. Right.
So put some context to that. Does it matter?
Hopefully not.
Right.
Right. So I typically don't keep anything of, security related stuff on
it's
USB
not like
keys.
a sex tape or some sort of like very like damning, of someone who's running for president is not on that flash drive, is what you're saying.
No, chances are it's RMM installers, backup agents, it's that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But as I'm going through having this meeting with the guys, I'm like, well, what happened if somebody got a hold of our RMM agent? Right? Well, if they got a hold of the RMM agent, they could, in theory, install it on their PC. Why would they? But you never know. And then they're not going to be able to backtrack in. But what if somebody just went to, this is how Charles's brain works. What if somebody went to a library and installed our agent on 30 PCs? Right? Let's pretend they could.
Yeah, let's no, let's not even pretend. Remember back in the day when I had school district to manage, and Charles is like, so Chris told me that they've got roughly 100 PCs. And Chris installs it on 1,000 PCs, but doesn't
Yeah,
tell
yeah, yeah.
Charles.
Yeah. Well, what's funny, it wasn't more of a security issue on that, but I'm like, oh my God, that's an RMM license. That's a
That's where I was going
AV
too.
license. That's an
Yeah.
EDR license. That's a 99, like all, I'm like, oh my God, all the
My
money, all
bill
the
for the
money.
following month was, oh
Yeah.
no.
And then I'm sitting there going, well, like if somebody did rogue install an RMM agent, how the hell would I know? Right. I get the report every day, but I don't know
Who reads the
how these things,
report?
well, stupid Charles does, but so anyway, so going back to the meeting with the techs and the thing, and there are some scenarios where you can't encrypt a USB drive, but we won't go there. I'm like, well, how? So in my brain, I'm sitting here saying, but they should be encrypting their drive where possible. And then so the whole CIS control comes up, and there's a whole component that literally talks about encrypting drives. And that's when it all started to click. I'm following what I hear Chris and what I hear at all these conferences. I'm fortunate enough to go to all these things and hear all these things. The team, not so much. I'm trying to change that this year. But if they don't know how to bake the cake, can I fault them for giving me, a brownie when I specifically asked for a cake, right? So the way I kind of like to explain CIS to people is CIS is a generic overview that Charles wants a cake with sprinkles. I'm not micromanaging. I'm not telling you to take a spoon and put the stuff on the spoon, weigh the spoon, weigh the spoon. I'm not going into all that. The end goal is, hey, just make sure a cake is delivered with sprinkles.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of like how I view it. So that if I get a cake from one of the guys and there's no sprinkles, they're violating policy. Right. Because if the policy says all cakes that are delivered to Charles says cake is a cake and sprinkles, it could be chocolate, it could be vanilla, it could be, Pepsi flavored. Doesn't matter.
Well,
The control
let's
doesn't
rewind
say
for a
that.
second. Let's rewind. Let's just call out a typical MSP. What MSP doesn't have, at least in the head, upstairs, some form of like when we onboard a new client, when we deploy a new laptop, when we do fill in the blank, we follow some sort of process, right? Like, and if we are a mature MSP, our staff is constantly helping us improve that process, making it more efficient, fill in the blank. But what you're saying is, let's up the game a little bit, right? Like, let's not even talk about CIS for a second. You're talking about saying, I have this piece of paper here called policy, called laptop deployment, laptop whatever. I don't care, fill in the blank. There's some level of like, if you don't follow this, you are violating our corporate policy around laptop deployment.
It could be as simple. So we use the software and we have a .pc on board on every customer, right? And when I see the computer name, right, desktop-QX39725, I know somebody didn't follow the policy.
Right.
Right. And it's not really a policy. It's more of a guide in our documentation system. But regardless, it's a policy for that task, right? But again, I don't care how they renamed it. There's 17 different ways to rename the computer. Sure. The end goal, it needs to be a certain standard. Each customer has a standard.
It needs to at least give me the illusion that they at least try to put sprinkles on the cake.
Absolutely. And so, like, in MSPs, we live in the land of assumptions that everyone knows the right thing to do. Right. And so that's where the controls are kind of helping me, not with the click here, click here, click here, but it's basically, hey, at the end result, cake with sprinkles.
If you walked backwards, did it achieve the intent that I set out to do by creating this policy? So if I went and looked at the laptop, did it get deployed the way I wanted it to, without looking at the process and procedures, but by looking at the policy itself that says, does it meet the following requirements? It does. Oh, okay. So they followed. Oh, wow. The scope that I defined as needing to be done for this task has been achieved. And yes, in fact, it looks like a cake and it even has sprinkles on it. Now, I don't know what it tastes like, but that's separate. Like
Doesn't matter.
we could do a whole nother episode on like, does the cake taste good? That's a whole nother conversation to have.
But the policy is going to dictate that the cake has sprinkles, right? And
Right.
it doesn't
and
matter.
that they followed that they by following the process and procedures, that their end result met the requirements of that policy.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you see these videos online of schools, right? And it's 100-question test. And question number 100 says, if you stand up and clap 3 times and whistle, you get 100, right? And then like you slowly start to see an hour, because nobody reads all the questions first, right?
Right.
Like they tell you to do, but whatever. Um, you start to see these videos, and like 30 minutes in, you see people bouncing out of their chair, clapping, whistling, all that stuff, right? But it's following the directions. And I'm not saying the controls are there to micromanage how you do what you do, right? But they give you guardrails.
Oh, that's a very good way to say it. Yeah, like let's go bowling, but let's create some sort of like parameters that say just roll the ball
Yeah,
inside of here.
yeah. Like in a bowling alley, the little things go up. You can kick the ball. You can,
I don't care how the ball starts to roll, as long as it doesn't
just needs to go
stop
down
before
the
it gets
thing,
to the
right?
other end. Yeah.
So going back to the USB thing, I'm like, all right, guys, what's on these sticks? Nobody can answer me what was on the stick,
Right, because they haven't
right?
looked at them. Like they just load
Nobody
crap
knows.
on them. Yeah.
Nobody knows, right?
Nobody knows. Yeah.
But chances are it's firewall backups, which
Sure.
that's a little sketchy, right? But they like to. My guys are weird. They like to run those USB wiper things that run for an hour every couple weeks. But
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. So
It's a
going
new
back,
drive.
yeah. So going back to CIS for the last couple of months, um, uh, it has been quite the experience to try and map our company, not our customers, just us, to follow the controls, right? And first off, it's educating the people.
Sure.
Here are the controls, right? So going back to what you talked about in the beginning, it was so weird and funny and awkward on that call when I had said that I'm having all of my employees sign off on our controls. I now realize sign off is the incorrect term. It is actually acknowledge.
Well, forget the term for
Right.
a second. You said that largely to a group of people that have been working through the CIS control set for a year plus. And you, in your first meeting, created silence after you stated what you did. Now, we'll argue that it took a few seconds for them to recognize sign off versus acknowledge, but you still had an entire group going, we don't do that.
Well, yeah, and see, that's what I don't understand. And I love these guys in the group, right? But if you're going to have a policy on baking the cake with sprinkles, and nobody knows that that's the policy, how are you going to get sprinkles?
So, and that's a very fair statement. So I think that there's a couple things here that we should unpack a little bit, and then I want to go back to kind of continue this sort of monologue, because I'm really appreciating what you're saying, because I've not heard anybody really articulate the way you are right now the challenges that I think a lot of MSPs are facing, but they aren't necessarily vocalizing it. So I hope those that are listening, if they're struggling with this, please reach out. Like there's help. Like it's not a 12-step program per se. It's 18-step program. Sorry, that was a little bit of CIS humor. So if you haven't heard of this before, there's two things that come up. You see them largely outside of CIS. One is a WISP and the other one is SSP. So written information security plan, or a system security policy or system security plan or program. I've heard the P used so many different ways, it's not even funny. But the point is, both of these documents represent an organization's mission, theme, directive around cybersecurity, aligned specifically with a framework, fill in the blank. I don't care if it's CIS, HIPAA, whatever, to, as an organization, say, this is how we're going to go about achieving some level of compliance against said framework. It is not the end all be all. It is if I was reading this as an outside third party, I would recognize like, wow, this organization takes cybersecurity seriously. They have a program in place. They have a plan of action. And here I've gotten to page whatever, fill in the blank. Here's the appendix, and it's listed out all these policies, access control and asset inventory. They've got policies. It may, in fact, even contain parts or entirety of policies within that document. This document, in fact, requires all staff to not just acknowledge, but they're signing off like, I agree, I wholeheartedly believe in this, and I'm going to do everything I can to support this. And when something doesn't align with this, I'm going to call it out and let my leadership know that that is true. That's one environment or one example. Then there's the others where it's like we have a staff or employee handbook. Employee handbook says thou shalt use employee issued devices only for work. Fill in the blank, right? Then you have the more of the model that I think you were articulating, whereas leadership has defined policies. They say what the scopes are. They expect the employees to follow them, and they've done some level of, from an instructional or scope standpoint, they've really not done the policies employee facing. They've done more of like how we operate and have backed that into a policy that they use more from a formality standpoint to tell the world, the insurance companies, the clients maybe. But really at the end of the day, to your point, where's the teeth in that? So because an employee could deviate from that and there's really no repercussions. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's no like ripple in the river. There's nobody's going to do or say anything or do anything differently, because why? They haven't seen the policy. They don't know what the policy stands for. They don't know why they're doing it. They're just following an instruction process and procedures. So those are kind of the pictures that are out there. So Charles, like, tell me where you're at, because prior to getting engaged with Secure Outcomes as an example, or using the CIS model, it wasn't like you hadn't put in place policies, process, and procedures prior to that, but you had an epiphany that made you feel like you needed to pursue something to do it, for lack of a better word, to do it better, or maybe not better, but to add clarity.
Yeah.
Standardized. That's
to
fair.
do it the way people smarter than me feel it should be done, right? So I had a work from home policy. I had it was a document. It was in Panda Docs. Everyone signed it. Then there was a laptop usage policy. There was an employee handbook. There's 15 other freaking documents, right, that everyone signs. But these are just like kind of like Charles's rules, right? From the company, like, here's what you should do. But it was a form of CIS, right? So now, as we have blown through, I went to a conference and I spent like a full day just my laptop hooked up to the TV in the room, and like it was a whole thing.
It was work.
And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the control that speaks to using personal devices, and I'm like,
sure,
that this is a far more eloquent way of saying what I have been telling my employees all along, right? But it's a little bit deeper. Like there's one about working from home, and it talks about don't have cords or you're going to trip over, things like that, right? So there's a lot of things in these documents that are written that it just makes a little more sense than make sure you're in a good working area.
Right. And it's it wasn't like one person created it, right? Like it was built by a group of people that toiled over it and said, how do we make this apply to sort of the masses, and that they would see this and not go, I'm not like Chris's company or Charles's company, so I can't do this. It was more of like, I see the intent. how does this apply, or how do I apply it appropriately to my organization?
Yeah, and MSPs right now are not regulated, right?
Right.
I feel it's coming. Something's coming, right? And when when I talk to a customer, I was in a customer last week, and they said, "Are you guys SOC whatever compliant?" I'm like, "No, that's we're not."
I mean, when I
However,
go
we
golfing, I pack an extra pair of
yeah
socks, just in
yeah,
case I get a hole in one.
but it was super awesome to be able to jump off that comment and say, "Actually, have you ever heard of CIS?"
Sure.
Um, and then I started walking them through what CIS is. I'm like, yeah, we're on our first pass of G3, going all the way down to Control 18. Boy,
Nice.
Control 18 was a fun one. Right now, I can have an engagement versus no, we don't do SOC. Can you sign my contract? Right.
And quite
So
honestly, on SOC, I think this is something that those that might be listening to this that are doing SOC and hearing it from the trenches is like, what are you going to actually tell a client? Like, yeah, we did SOC on this one server that we don't use anymore, just so that we could satisfy your request. Like,
well, and they don't
make their head
know.
spin, right?
The customer doesn't know what SOC is.
Absolutely, right.
They just they see it on a web page somewhere and they're like, well, everyone must go through the $30,000, thing,
I
right?
mean, if
With
you're
your
not spending 30 grand, I mean, what are you going to do to
yeah,
make me feel safe?
with your 10 employees. But it's nice. I'm like, look, our team follows, industry standards. We do CIS. You can Google it. You can look at all of our policies. It's not actually our policies, but it's built on that. You know,
Right.
it gives them the warm fuzzy to say it versus our guys are the best in town, best
Yeah.
ROI, da 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 da.
The
It's more
the
of a
asterisk model, like what makes your PBX VoIP system better than the
yeah,
guy that our stuff just works?
yeah. It's a
Isn't it the
value add.
same? Isn't it the same as
Yeah.
theirs? Yeah, but we have
But
better tchotchkes.
yeah, if I have to hear value add, I'm gonna scream. But it's I will tell you it this whole process, which the guys are going nuts. We have a documentation platform that helps me. They have some pre-made templates. We modify them, we assign them. It's not like
You
I'm
make them
spending
yours.
yeah, I'm not spending 30 hours trying to figure out grammar, right? It's already there. I'm just tweaking it. The guys are now starting to think, which is more exciting to me than anything.
That is achieving culture through a
Yes.
task.
Well, like they get a little bit smart ass about it, right? Like, hey, do me a favor, I need you to go format that firewall. I don't know, Charles. Our control says we have to have an encrypted drive. I can't do an encrypted drive. You know, there's going to be exceptions, but
But they're
the
saying
culture,
they made very clear that they read it or they wouldn't even be able
yes.
to articulate that.
Like if it wasn't weird, I kind of would have hugged him, but it's not appropriate, so I gave him a high five. Right? Like a tear
Who
came
wants a
to my
hug?
eye.
Who wants a
Yeah,
hug? Barney's
like
here.
you listened, you actually listened, right? But it's good because when the techs are out in the field and doing what they do, I trust them to
Right.
do the right thing. And sometimes because they're techs, they to go to New York, they go to California, then they back up to New York by foot
Right.
versus taking an airplane. But I want them to know where the airport terminal is. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
I mean,
that's kind of what CIS is doing.
what you're describing is like, I know that out there they're following, like, say, corporate integrity, right? Like that they have both the client's best interest in mind and ours. The problem is, and I think largely what a lot of MSPs are dealing with is they have employees with that mindset, but when they're at home, when they're following, say, what should be that what they do in the field is a whole lot harder to do when they're at home, because at home there's nobody there to watch. There's nobody that's going to provide feedback. There's no accountability. There's no
Yeah.
looking over your shoulder. So they have like, well, it's faster if I go to the right around this corner than it is if I go to the left because there's a detour. But the detour makes me pause and go, oh, it says get off here, check your tire pressure because this road's going to be rough. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go this way. Right? Like what you're
Yeah.
describing is so true. Like Yeah, what you're describing makes so much sense, and I think that I hope those listening are like, I need to make sure that I'm spending more time with our staff, helping them understand, and more importantly, giving them a voice to provide feedback in what we're doing. Because if they're not providing a voice and feedback, then the yes, the nod, okay, or the shake of the head of not understanding, those are not beneficial to the success of whatever policy you're writing, whether they stay with the company or not. Because if they don't agree with it, someone else is just shaking their head yes when they
Yeah.
might shake their head no. So, with the last 5 minutes, Charles, walk me through what it looks like for you when you have, say, a final version of the policy, and maybe even like how you get to a final version. What does that exercise look like?
I don't think you'll ever have a true final version. And let me explain. Uh you owned your own company. You had a handbook, right?
Yes,
Um
I didn't read
how
it,
many
but yes.
times, it doesn't matter. How
Right.
many times after the handbook was originally written did you modify it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Quite a few times
Right?
actually.
Because things change,
Laws
right?
changed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So CIS, in my opinion, our policies will never be done. They will be a moving target always. Hell, when I started this process back when peer groups started talking about this, there were 20 controls.
Yeah.
Now there are 18, right?
CIS version 7, CIS version 8. Got it. Yes.
Yeah. So they're never going to be done.
Right.
But what's going to happen here, and this is why we use the platform, Control 7 may need to be tweaked a little bit. We make a change and it sends out a revision to the team, right?
Which allows you to
And
constantly be in a state of flux, and not in a negative way, but in a way to be
now,
flexible and adaptive to the environment's changed or the variables have changed. We need to make a change so that we are in front of this, not behind the 8 ball on this.
and who in their right mind knows where their employee handbook is, right? Or knows how to find it. I
And
know,
what's
like
in
the
it that matters, right? Like,
yeah,
so think about the
where the
for those listen.
bathrooms are,
Yeah,
right?
like you have to initial how many times, right? You sign
Yeah,
off on things like I will not do anti-discrimination, all that stuff's in there.
yep.
And what's really interesting is in so many corporate environments, it's like one and done, right? Like when was the last time you signed off on the handbook after you were hired? Like
Exactly.
that's to your point,
So
right? Like I think an employee handbook, go back to like the SSP or the WISP. I think an employee handbook, quite honestly, is just another name for something that's very similar in nature that doesn't should not be in a binder on a shelf on in
we
some
we
obscure office.
jokingly, yeah, we jokingly call it Control 0, right? Is the handbook.
Right.
Um,
Right, fair. Governance and
and
leadership or something along those lines where that would
yeah,
live.
and we've actually put it into our platform where that we do our documents with. So our handbook is in there. The point that I'm trying to make is employee can wake up 2 o'clock in the morning, log into the portal, see their handbook, see all of our controls. And I made it extremely clear. Do not under any circumstances sign or acknowledge. Do not acknowledge any of these if you feel we are not doing it this way or if you think it's wrong. Right? There's no fear. Just have a conversation with me. Please help me help you. And it's been good because I've had a few
Help
people come
us.
up, yeah, like, hey, what about this? Don't we do it this way? And I'm like, we do? All right, let's fix that. So now we have fixed that. Do you feel we meet this control? Yes. Cool. Right?
The sad part is what you just described is if you're not hiring people, like getting to that, right? Like getting all employees to go, hey, when was the last time I looked at the employee handbook? Like making some sort of like security training is like for most compliance frameworks is like once a year. Like quite honestly, I'll tell you right now, like if I was really wanting to dial in on like phishing simulations and those kind of things, it's useless if it's once a year. Like it has no bearing. Like the stuff changes so fast. Like if I want to be good
Yeah.
at this, I got to teach them like, hey, you know what you should be looking for right now, and I'm not going to send it to you because I know you already wrote a rule in Outlook, so you don't have to look at it anyways. But like, hey, this just came in. Did you know that you should be a little bit vigilant, right? You know, going forward on DDoS attacks? Like, it's a big thing right now. CISA just put a whole write-up on it. Like, what are we doing in our own organizations to tell our staff, like, hey, today when you go to work, I know you got to tie your shoes and make sure you put your right shoe on before the left shoe, or however you go about doing it, but also be vigilant. Be careful out there. Make sure that you're watching. Look both ways before you cross the street. And in the cyber world, that might be like, hey, that looks funny. I should say something. No, I got a lot of other things to do, and this ticket needs to get closed.
Yeah, and it really opens your eyes to things. I'll just one more little quick story here. We have a bench. Customer has a problem with their PC. Take the computer, put it on the bench. And one of the controls it talks about BYOD devices, your internal assets, and what they call foreign guest equipment. We may not have segmented completely perfect that bench, right? And the control helped us realize, oh wait, we were absolutely supposed to firewall this off from our network, and here's why.
Yeah.
And so we spent a week ripping apart our network, right? And then you talk to my MSP friends, and I'm like, hey, how do you handle your bench? And they're like, oh, it's segmented. We don't let anybody plug into the network. I was like, dude, I was at your office last week. You gave me an Ethernet cord. Oh, yeah. So then it turns into
it was kind of segmented until you got there.
Yeah, he said, well, it's you. I said, doesn't matter if it's me. Sprinkles, cake. Because he knew the reference, right? So he starts laughing. But you got to get into this thing. And the last thing I'll kind of mention here. Every week, so we do 2 quick meetings every day. Hey, how's it going? Hey, how was your day? Right? Those kind of AM wrap, PM wrap. We have been having one employee give a 5-minute review of one of the controls every week.
Oh, nice.
So, hey, Dax, tell me about Control 6. And he's like, oh, well, let me look it up. And Control 6 does da 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 da. So again, this is not a one and done. They don't just sign it and move on. Right. This has to become a part of your culture.
I like it. And for those of you listening, here in 4 weeks, August, whatever the Tuesday is, the first Tuesday in August, we have an 8 a.m. to noon. We're doing cultures and strategy, and this type of conversation will definitely be found in that workshop. Hope to see you guys there. And if you're listening to any future episodes, I'm sure we'll be talking more about what is to come at ChannelCon 2023. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of MSP 1337. Have a great week.